Hi, this is Dr. James Patterson, English professor. Around the world in higher education, we're seeing an epidemic, if you will, of plagiarism from students. And a number of research studies have been conducted. One of the leading causes or problems related to plagiarism in higher education is the fact that some students simply have not received adequate training in what constitutes plagiarism and how to correctly incorporate published sources into our papers for our college professors. In this short video, I just want to talk about two instances. One is a very blatant, clear example of plagiarism, and the second one in this paper is more of an accidental plagiarism, but I want to show you what happened so you can avoid these problems in the future. All right, let me take you into my screen here. This is a paper that was written called Cognitive Development in Early Childhood Education. The name of the student has been withheld. And in this very first paragraph, the student sets out to talk about early childhood education and introduce the topic of cognitive development. In this second paragraph, the student writes, "One of the most important concepts in the field of study of early childhood education is cognitive development." That's a simple topic sentence for the paragraph. The student continues, "Cognitive development is defined as the neuroscience and psychology focusing on a child's development in terms of information processing, conceptual resources, perceptual skill, language learning, and other aspects of brain development." Now, as a college professor reading this paragraph, that sentence sounds really well written, and I'm particularly intrigued by the list of terms: information processing, conceptual resources, perceptual skill, etc. I'm intrigued by the student who would put together this list, so I'm curious. I take a copy of this paper, of this sentence, I take a copy of this sentence and I plug it into a Google search, and I come up with this page at Wikipedia, where it says, "Cognitive development is a field of study in neuroscience and psychology focusing on a child's development in terms of information processing, conceptual resources, perceptual skill, language learning, and other aspects of the developed adult brain and cognitive psychology." And what I find is that the student has lifted this sentence, this definition, directly from Wikipedia. Now, in this paragraph, the student has not placed any text in quotation marks, and there is no reference in this paragraph to Wikipedia. In this case, the student has committed blatant plagiarism because the student has taken the work of the editors and the writers at Wikipedia. The student has stolen this definition and presented this definition and list as the student's own work. That is plagiarism, and it will always get you in trouble. But there are some times when students sort of accidentally pick up information and commit plagiarism in the process. So I want to continue with this paragraph. After the definition, the student writes, "Cognitive development in children involves building learning skills such as attention, memory, and thinking. An instructor from Trinity International University with a master's degree in counseling psychology stated, quote, 'These crucial skills enable children to process sensory information and eventually learn to evaluate, analyze, remember, make comparisons, and understand cause and effect. Although some cognitive skill development is related to a child's genetic makeup, most cognitive skills are learned.'" And the student has placed this quotation in quotation marks and has cited the author Gillis. When I go to the student's bibliography, I follow the information that takes me to the article by Gary Gillis here at study.com. This is called "What Are Cognitive Skills in Children? Development, Definition, and Training." And I'm looking for that quote from Gillis that was just quoted. I want to make sure that the student got it correctly. So I come down here, and in the second paragraph, under "What Are Cognitive Skills?" Gary Gillis writes, "Cognitive skill development in children involves the progressive learning of learning skills such as attention, memory, and thinking. These crucial skills enable the children to process sensory information and eventually learn to evaluate, analyze, remember, and make comparisons and understand cause and effect. So I can see quickly that the student has quoted from Gillis correctly. But here's what troubles me. In this signal phrase, the student has written, an instructor from Trinity International University with a master's degree in counseling psychology. I don't know from the text whether that instructor from Trinity International University is the author, Gary Gillis, or somebody else. So I go back to the article by Gillis, and I see up here at the beginning of the article, it says, instructor Gary Gillis. Gary has a master's degree in counseling psychology and has been teaching and developing courses in higher education since 1988. Now, there's still no mention to Trinity University, but I do have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and from the website, a master's degree in counseling psychology. In higher academic writing in the universities and colleges, we define plagiarism as any 3 words or more taken in sequence from a published source. That's a direct quote, and it needs to be placed in quotation marks. So here a student has taken a sentence from Gary Gillis and correctly, using quotation marks and citation, has provided that quote from Gary Gillis. But the student also reached up there and grabbed the fact that Gary Gillis has, quote, a master's degree in counseling psychology. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words taken in sequence from this published source. The student has plagiarized a master's degree in counseling psychology. Without quotation marks, the student has presented this information as the student's own writing, that the student somehow knows the instructor from Trinity International University, and the student just happens to know that that instructor has a master's degree in counseling psychology. And that is not true. That is a lie. The student has lifted this information from the published source and put it into the document as the student's own work. This also is plagiarism. Plagiarism can be blatant, it can be obvious, it can be intentional. Students will deliberately take information and put it into their papers with the hope that the instructor won't catch it. But there are also times when a well-meaning, well-intentioned student accidentally commits plagiarism because they miss these small details. In academic writing at the college and university, the student needs to take careful attention to every word that goes into the paper to make sure that you have correctly identified who said what and where it is published.